What is the stance of Islam on evolution?
As far as the question on theory of evolution is come, there is no book so far that I have read which talks about fact of evolution. Theory of evolution means the theory.
Thầy tao bắn người. 你真没见过黑社会哈！
Mày tưởng tao
操
không
你
hả?
妈
Tao bắn
的
mày á.
敢不敢跟我比划比
Tao
划
xuống？đây nè.
操你妈！
Hai vụ á, mày có chân
操
tao
你
bắn
妈！
mày á.
我
Mày
也
tưởng mày
敢不敢比划什么叫黑手？
Tại vì không có súng
操
đây
你
tất
妈
cả
的
tao
你
đều có súng.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic College Podcast. A while back, I saw that this YouTube channel, they made a video in response to Dr. Zakir Naik. So yeah, let's take a look and see what this guy has to say, and yeah, then I'll make my response.
My name's Pranav, you're watching Science is Dope. Dr. Zakir Naik, he's very popular, I'm sure all of you know him. He's a famous Muslim televangelist who holds huge talks where he logically tells everyone why Islam is superior to other religions.
Anyone proves to me logically, scientifically, any other religion better than Islam, I am ready to accept it.
Okay, so right off the bat, he is committing the special pleading fallacy. I mean, every religious person in the world believes that their religion is the superior one, okay? Dr. Zakir Naik is not special here, okay? Every Muslim believes that, every Christian believes that. As a matter of fact, every atheist believes that their position is better than, their position is superior as well. I mean, you're an atheist probably. I mean, do you not believe that you know, believing in evolution is better than those of us savages who don't believe in evolution? I mean, is that your view? I mean, isn't that why you made a video attacking Zakir Naik in the first place?
In fact, his confidence in Islam is so much that he issues a debate challenge to literally everyone.
Arrange for dialogue, I will debate him. You arrange, I will debate him. You want to have a lecture? Yes. So if you want to have a debate also, we can arrange.
But if they accept, he finds convenient reasons to back out.
I personally do not debate with women. You send me the number one doctor of divinity in Zambia.
And he doesn't forget to remind you that he's a medical doctor. And so everything he's saying has to be right.
Obviously, this guy doesn't understand how logical fallacies work. So he says that Dr. Zakir Naik saying he's a medical doctor is an appeal to authority fallacy. So in case you guys don't know, appeal to authority fallacy is when you appeal to your authority in order to make it seem like your argument is valid because the authority says so, right? Instead of making any kind of logical explanation, right? But the thing is, this is not appeal to authority, because he never said that his argument is correct because he's a doctor. He's just saying that he's a doctor. That's not a fallacy. Like, I'm a human being. Me saying I'm a human being is not a fallacy, okay? So I don't know where he get this idea that him saying that he's a doctor is a fallacy. I mean, no, it's not. Like, for example, it's the same as you saying that you're an Indian. I mean, I'm guessing you're an Indian. That doesn't make it a fallacy. It's only a fallacy if he said that, his argument is correct because he's a doctor. That would be a fallacy.
What is the stance of Islam on evolution?
As far as the question on theory of evolution is come, there is no book so far that I have read which talks about fact of evolution. Theory of evolution means the theory.
There is a logical fallacy here called equivocation. When a word has two meanings and you use it in the wrong meaning to support your argument, that's equivocation fallacy. What's the word here? That's right, theory. Now, in common language, a theory is used to mean a guess. This is not what a scientific theory means. In science, a theory is part of the scientific method, and the scientific method is a way of analyzing and understanding the world.
So yeah, it's a strawman argument fallacy. Zakir Naik never said that theory in the common language is the same as theory in scientific world, right? He never said that. I don't know where he get this. So it can't be an equivocation if he never said that, right?
There is no book so far that I have read which talks about fact of evolution. Theory of evolution means the theory.
Is evolution an observed fact? Yes, and I can give you many examples of this. If you take the flu shot, within the next year you'll have to take it again. This is because the virus would have changed, would have evolved enough to be able to evade the vaccine. It's the same reason why there's no cure to the common cold. It's the reason why we have antibiotic resistant bacteria. The ones that survive despite use of the antibiotics are the ones that get to pass on their genes to the next generation, and the survivors of that generation pass on their survival genes, or the genes that help them survive, to the next generation. And this process repeats until we have bacteria that are extremely resilient to antibiotics. Now,
here he's committing the faulty comparison fallacy. First of all, what he's describing is microevolution, it's not macroevolution. So there's a huge difference between microevolution and macroevolution. And the thing is that no one denies that, change happens in terms of like microevolution, like in bacteria and stuff like that. But there's a huge difference between bacteria changing versus an entire species changing its form. Okay, these two things are completely different. And the claims are completely different, because one is something you can see for yourself, the other not so much, right? It can take millions of years for it to happen, supposedly. And also, this is another strawman argument fallacy. I mean, Zakir Naik is not saying that change never happens in nature. So the problem comes with the theory of evolution as a whole, okay? So he's acting as if like the fact of evolution, which is that change happens in some species or some smaller living organism, therefore that means it happens for all species, okay? That's where the problem comes in. And this is the reason Zakir Naik takes issue with this, okay? Because it's a very big claim, because we don't have enough evidence or enough data to make this kind of claim, okay? For example, one article in National Geography says that over 86% of Earth's species are unknown. 86%. So it says the following: even after centuries of effort, some 86% of Earth's species have yet to be fully described. According to a new study that predicts our planet is home to 8.7 million species, that means scientists have catalogued less than 15% of species now alive and currently extinct. Extinction rates mean many unknown organisms will wink out of existence before they can even be recorded. Okay. Now the study was driven by a simple question: are we within reach of finding all species, or are we way off? Said the co-author Boris Worm of Canada's Dalhousie University. The answer is we are very way off. But regardless, let's continue.
Can evolution be observed in large animals like dogs? Yes. The different breeds of dog are a result of evolution. These two dogs haven't evolved so much that they are no longer the same species, but over generations their line of ancestors have been artificially separated by humans, and this accumulation of separate physical traits led to them appearing very different today. So evolution, living things changing their form slowly over several generations, is a fact. So what is this theory of evolution?
Yay, good job, you proved evolution. Actually, no, you only proved that even if I were to accept this argument that these dogs evolved from like wolves or whatever, right? That still wouldn't prove that this now means that evolution happened for all species, okay? It just proves that, yeah, when it comes to dogs, we see diversity and we see them being changed. So what? So basically here he's committing the history generalization fallacy. Just because change happens for dog does not mean that it happens for all species. Because there are plenty of species that never changed. Okay, for example, one good example would be, and I talked about this before, horseshoe crabs. And there are hundreds of other species like this. So yeah, good job. You've proved evolution for one species. Now you have 8 million more species to go. Once you've done all of that, then you can come and tell me how true evolution is, right? So, and that's the problem. The amount of data we have in regards to evolution is very, very small. Also, that this dog argument was made famous by Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins, he tries to make this whole argument that, look at artificial dogs that are bred artificially, right? This proves that evolution can cause huge amount of diversity. That's the best explanation for this, right? Except no, actually, the dog doesn't prove anything at all. For example, in his book, Our Domestic Dog, A Shrew in Wolf's Clothing, geneticist Wolf Eckert Loning of the Max Planck Institute in Germany, he's a geneticist. In his book, he basically showed countless research on all different type of dog breeds, and he concludes that it doesn't prove evolution at all, but rather devolution. So basically, in a nutshell, what the so-called dog evolution shows is that dogs are actually become weaker. Another peer-reviewed study that was posted in PLOS Genetics also said the same thing. It said, selective breeding for desirable traits in strictly controlled populations has generated extraordinary diversity in canine morphology and behavior, but has also led to a loss of genetic variation and random entrapment of disease alleles. As a consequence, specific diseases are not prevalent in certain breeds. So when you artificially breed dogs, it actually causes a lot of weakness and a lot of sickness among the dogs, a lot of type of deformities when it comes to the dogs. Dr. Wolf Eckert actually was interviewed by Casey Luskin, and he actually explained this really well in a recent podcast. You guys can check it out here.
So why do you think that these arguments are totally wrong? So, for example, what is really happening in dog evolution on the genetic and organismal levels?
It is correct. There are enormous differences. The enormous difference of quantity. They usually totally miss the enormous differences in quality. They don't take into account the direction of the changes from wolf to chihuahua. It is almost always losses of function, deterioration of integration on the genetic and anatomical levels. And we will talk about some of the examples soon.
And Dr. Lonek, can you enumerate several examples for losses of functions on the genetic or organismal levels in dogs?
Yes. Now, perhaps the most widely known example are dogs with white fur. What is white fur? Well, it's a loss of function mutation, and the dogs with white fur are unable to produce melanin, which is necessary to produce color in the fur. For example, hairless dogs. Well, these hairless dogs not only are hairless, but the feature of hairlessness is associated with dental abnormalities. The premolars are totally missing, and often also the fangs and the incisors. Canine ectodermal dysplasia. Similar things can also happen in mice and men. And these are also very interesting and well-known examples of losses of genetical and anatomical functions. And such losses cannot be quoted as proof for macroevolution from fish to humans, because, as everybody understands, a chihuahua is less than a wolf, but a human being is more than a fish.
Of Charles Darwin. He wrote a book called The Origin of Species, and in that book he says that he went on a ship by the name of HMS Beagle, and he went on an island by the name of Calotropis.
The island is called Galapagos, not Calotropis. He makes the same error every single time he talks about evolution.
Which went on an island by the name of Calotropis. Charles Darwin went on an island by the name of Calotropis. He goes to an island by the name of Calotropis.
It's almost like he's rehearsed and practiced this answer very well, and while rehearsing he's learned of all these mistakes as well, because you can see him repeating the same mistakes over and over again every time he talks about this.
So here he's committing the nitpicking fallacies. Basically, he's attacking Zakir Naik for mispronouncing something. I mean, how is this relevant to his argument? This has nothing to do with his argument. So how is this relevant?
If there was evolution today, we should be having some people who are in between monkeys and human beings. You don't find that in any museum.
This is perhaps the greatest misconception there is about evolution. Human beings and apes and monkeys don't have a relationship like monkeys evolved into apes and those then evolved into human beings. The transition is not between animals that exist today, but rather the transition is between the fossils of animals that existed in the past and the animals that are present today. I'll provide two sources down below. One showing how humans transition from their hominid ancestors, and another showing fossilized bones of the fins of fishes transitioning into the bones of a human arm.
I actually went and looked at his sources, and I realized something really funny. So his sources actually refute him. Okay. For example, one of the sources he posted in the description, it says the following. It's a research paper which says, we review the evolution of human bipedal locomotion with a particular emphasis on the evolution of the foot. We begin in the early 20th century and focus particularly on hypothesis of an ape-like ancestors for humans. Hypothesis. It literally says hypothesis. So this idea of an ape-like ancestor for humans is a hypothesis. They literally say that in the paper, that your own sources refute you. Also, he didn't refute Zakir Naik. I mean, Zakir Naik's point is that even if you accepted all these premises and said that, okay, fine, no problem. The transition period is happening for a long period of time, and it happened in the past, right? Happened in the ancient past. So we have no way of telling or whatever. and it happened for a very long period of time, still, the fact that we have chimps coming from the same ancestors, supposedly, and humans coming from the same ancestor, then it is very much likely, very much logically possible that there would be some kind of transitional species that existed between them. Okay? I mean, why is it that we don't have some kind of species that looks like chimps but are actually as smart as humans? Why don't we have that? I mean, why don't we have something like Caesar from the Planet of the Apes movies, right? So, and that's the point. And this is a very valid point, actually. Because if this was true, that we all come from the same ancestors, we would see things like that. But we don't. So Zakir Naik is correct here.
Even according to molecular biology, according to the specialists of molecular biology, they say it is absurd to think that our DNA of the human being have been evolved from it. It's not possible at all.
I'm glad you brought up molecular biology, Zakir Naik, because I'm sure you would be aware of the Human Genome Project, which sequenced our entire DNA. There's also a chimpanzee genome project that did the same with the chimpanzee. And we know today that humans and chimpanzees share about 98% of their genetic material. We know conclusively that both species descended from the same ancestor species that lived about 6 million years back. I guess the molecular biologists forgot to mention this.
Okay, so this is not true, first of all. Also, even if this was true, this is what is known as the questionable cause fallacy. Just because there's a correlation between human and chimp genomes does not mean there's a causation. And that causation being a ancestor, right? Yes, there's a correlation, there's similarities, but human beings also have similarities with bananas. Do you think human beings and bananas have a common ancestor? Of course not. Also, this is absolutely false. The Human Genome Project study did not show 99% or 98% similarity between humans and chimps. So basically what the scientists did was that basically they looked at these two genomes, and when it comes to contradictory information in the genomes, they completely excluded all of that. They got rid of all of it. So this is basically a genetic cherry picking. Right? This is cherry picking fallacy. They're cherry picking which information suits with their theory and ignoring any other information that doesn't. When people present this study, they always misrepresent it.
It's often said that we humans share % of our DNA and 99% with chimpanzees. Taken literally, those numbers make it sound like we could pluck one cell from a chimp and one from a human, pull out the tangled bundles of DNA known as chromosomes, unroll each one like a scroll, and read off two nearly identical strings of letters. But in reality, the human and chimp scrolls don't sync up so easily. In the 6 to 8 million years since we split from our last common ancestor, chance mutations and natural selection have changed each of our genomes in radical and unique ways. When researchers sat down to compare the chimp and human genomes, those single-letter differences were easy to tally, but the big mismatch sections weren't. For example, if a genetic paragraph, thousands of letters long, appears twice in a human scroll, but only once in its chimp counterpart, should that second human copy count as thousands of changes, or just one? And what about identical paragraphs that appear in both genomes, but in different places, or in reverse order, or broken up into pieces? Rather than monkey around with these difficult questions, the researchers simply excluded all the large mismatch sections, a whopping 1.3 billion letters in all, and performed a letter-by-letter comparison on the remaining 2.4 billion, which turned out to be 98.77% identical.
And another problem that exists in this evolutionary nonsense is that this whole idea that we have similarities. But the thing is that how do you even decide what is similarity and what is not? Because if this is true that mutations are happening constantly, and change is happening constantly, then it could be the case that something has changed in such a way to be similar to us, as opposed to it was being that way originally, right? It is very much possible that things could evolve in such a way where they look similar, when in reality they're not actually similar. But regardless, let me make this argument to put this whole thing into bed. It's a modus ponens argument, so should be easy enough to understand. So let's read this. Premise 1. If change happens, then similarity between species can either be because of change, or it could be a genuine similarity. Premise 2. Change happens. Conclusion. Therefore, similarity between species can either be because of change, or it can be genuine similarity. Okay? So in other words, we have no way of knowing. We have no way of knowing if this change or similarity that we're seeing are actually because it's genuine change or similarities, or because it has changed to look similar to us, okay? But in reality, it doesn't have any similarity, okay? It's very much possible. So we have no way of telling this. If you guys like the video, like, share, subscribe. And if you want to support me, then please consider do so by supporting me on Patreon or becoming a member on YouTube. The link in the description. So yeah, we just want to end this video. Thank you guys for watching.